thank you very much for joining, and thank you for flying from Canada and other countries, some of you, to be with us. Actually, most of you everybody else is in Lithuania currently, right? Apart from Magnus. But you have lived abroad, and and worked abroad, and I was trying to figure out how to kick off that panel. And in my international panel moderation and observing experience, I have noticed that the best panel discussions are the ones that involve storytelling and little icebreakers that may contain some humorous elements. Before we plunge into the personal career paths, I would invite everybody to remember as sort of a joke or an anecdote or a misunderstanding that would be related to what we refer to as international experience, career-wise. There is one story that I always remember and I will never forget from my studies, and I will kick it off by sharing my story first. I did my Erasmus in Ireland, and I remember there was this one class where this professor, who was German, asked European students what stereotypes they had about the US before going to the US, and then he asked the Americans what stereotypes they had about Europe before coming here. So when Europeans needed to speak, a couple of them raised their hands, and that was it. And then when he referred to the US people, it was 7 of them in the class, and 6 of them have spoken, and then there was 1 left, and then he just raised his hand and said something like, "You guys kind of have a lot of churches, and I don't really have anything to say." And then I was like, so this tells me about the difference in education, because in the US you are kind of encouraged to speak whether you do have anything to say or not. And so for me, this is a story of education rather than business. But do you have a story like that, or a similar misunderstanding, funny story to share with us to kick off that panel? Agnus. I hope that the microphones will be working.
Okay, now. Storytelling. I was not prepared for this question.
Okay, we can also start with Tadas.
But one idea came to my mind immediately. I believe many of you working with American market, and we Lithuanians, we're writing in emails in the specific way, let's say, very direct emails, different than, let's say, North American style. So we had the cases where, directors of sales supporting the local team in North America. And once they the locals getting those emails, they immediately go into HR and basically saying, some kind of the harassment cases, why it's so direct, why, it's more comments than no chitty chat or other things. So this is very first thought on my mind.
Thank
the
you.
difference between Lithuanian and North American.
The Lithuanians are more direct in their business communication, is what you're saying. Vaiva?
Yes. Interesting question. So I guess for me, I did have some interesting situations when I told my friends that I'm moving to Lithuania. So a lot of them thought like, what happened to you? Is the family okay? And like, all they imagined is that it's super dark and underdeveloped, things like that. And now, actually, those are the same friends that are coming now to Vilnius for vacation. They're really enjoying the liveliness, the cleanliness of the city, how safe it is as well. Yeah, we just discussed with Giedrius that Vilnius is becoming extremely safe, right, in the recent statistics. So yeah, just some funny stories. Yeah.
Thank you. Yannick?
Yeah, funnily enough, some friends of mine visited a couple of weeks ago, and they had exactly the same feedback. So, something that was striking for me when I was trying to find a job here in Lithuania, I went to several interviews, including the place where I'm currently working. I think in every single one, the first 10 minutes wasn't, about my competences, what did I work. They always started the same thing. Okay, before we start, why do you want to come here? I don't understand.
So you went to Lithuania?
Yeah, so, I came then physically because this wasn't remote, so I came here. Every single one could not possibly understand why I was coming here rather than, working in Belgium, where I'm from, or another country. Because everybody was leaving and nobody can understand why possibly on earth I would want to come here.
Do you still have those questions? Do you still get them?
Yes, but for different reasons. Now it's not so much, why I came. Now it's more like, why did I stay? That's like shifting.
And if you decide to return to Belgium, you would probably get a lot of questions about why do you want to go back?
Yes, and my family still asks, like if I have a family member I haven't seen in a long time, they're like, okay, why Lithuania? And it's an easy answer because my wife is Lithuanian.
Okay,
so
you spoil. Okay, I was gonna ask you that, but now we know you only came to Lithuania because of your wife. But we will get to experience.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
To compare the international experience, Rosita, what would you want to share?
First of all, really glad to be back home, as Danske Bank is my former employer, and I spent quite a bit of time here. Gedris, hi, nice to see you. And actually going here, all the fun or interesting situations were about Danske Bank, experience at Danske Bank. So maybe I'll just talk through one of them. When it was my first first visit to Copenhagen, to the headquarters in this nice, fabulous building, which is no longer probably part of Danske Bank. I'm just looking at Gedrus. I came into the building, and it's a fantastic building, and everybody was greeting me, you know, and I thought, oh my goodness, that was such a fabulous experience. And only later on, I understood that there was a meeting, general meeting with labor unions, which is very, very strong in Scandinavian markets. And there was an announcement that there's going to be GBS built in Lithuania, and I was at that point of time visiting the headquarters, so all the people from this particular meeting were greeting me, and I thought, oh my goodness, because I had a very different experience with labor unions here in Lithuania, and that was a very bad experience. And what I understood from that experience, that labor unions were a big part of my job, really. For all those 7 years that I stayed with Danske Bank, we've connected almost, you know, on weekly or bi-weekly basis, and that was a very different understanding why labor unions were important. Again, in comparison to my Lithuanian experience.
Would you define it in one word? Were they aggressive? What was so bad about the experience?
For Scandinavian, it was all about the business. So it was very important to have the balance between the business and employees, meaning, you know, that the business would not strive without good cost management. So if the decision was taken, you know, that some cost optimization had to be done, and some employees had to retire or leave the organization in the cost, let's say, less efficient countries. So this was the decision made together with employees. And this was a very different understanding and setup, big learning for me.
It's probably changing in Lithuania these days, but Tadas, what is your story?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'll pose a question for you guys. How do you spot an American in a crowded street of Vilnius in the middle of April?
Khaki pants?
Very close. Person wearing shorts. I can joke around about that because I was one of those people. So it was a little bit of a culture shock coming here, spending all of my professional adulthood life abroad. Quite a few nuances to deal with and learn along the way. So dressing culture, water cooler culture that doesn't really exist here in the way that I was used to in the United States, those kind of things. So yeah.
What is your story, actually? Let's get into your personal career paths a little bit. You were born in Lithuania, right?
Yes. So my diaspora story actually begins in '96, and the story goes something like this. My parents came to me and my sister one morning, and they said, maybe some of you heard the story, we have two propositions for you. You have to pick one. So do you want to go to a summer camp for 2 weeks, or you want to go to United States?
For eternity.
indefinitely. So my sister and I looked at each other, going to the States, Dad. So that was 20 years later. We went to New York. I finished high school there, undergrad, my MBA, started a career in New York, worked my way up, and then moved to Florida like all Americans do, snowbirds, eventually moved to Florida. We did the same thing. About 2 years ago, when I was at this meeting at ISM, my heart was already percolating with the idea of maybe perhaps time to explore this crazy idea and move back to Lithuania. And especially changes when you have kids. The roots of being hardcore Lithuanian and who you are, and bringing that culture, language, experiences to not just yourself but your kids.
But because your wife is Lithuanian as well, I think you
Correct.
mentioned. Okay.
That's correct.
So you did take that decision, and you relocate yourself. Was it 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, something
It was
like
a little
that?
over a year ago, last year. We made that decision. We actually weren't sure yet, but I came in May and I never left. So I'm glad to say I'm back home.
So congratulations and welcome back. And I really, I'm interested in your career story, but let's hear from some others and see what they have done. Aviva has also come back from, I think, the UK, right? Recently, no, not recently, to Lithuania. Tell
Quite
us more.
recently, yeah, a couple of years, yeah.
Welcome
yes,
back
so-
as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, great question. So I guess for me, when I was younger, I was always into maths, and I kind of traveled a few countries doing maths, Olympiads, etc. And then during those events, I met some people who really strongly encouraged me to reach education abroad, and that and some other ambitions that I had encouraged me to pursue education in the UK, and then spent 4 years studying maths and computer science there, really high quality education, and then spent a few years. So while I was at uni, everyone was talking about quantitative finance, quantitative analytics, and that's the career I decided to pursue as well, and spent a few years in London, working for Goldman Sachs and as a quant, but also in the machine learning area, AI area. And yeah, currently I'm helping to build a team of quants here in Vilnius, at Danske Bank.
Would you maybe explain to those who don't specifically know what that is,
Yes.
trying to establish a quant in Lithuania or at Danske? What would that involve?
Yes, great question. So actually, I would say Danske Bank is probably like one of the first companies that have that sort of role, because previously in Vilnius you couldn't really get quantitative finance roles, and that involves like heavy understanding of maths, like in-depth understanding of maths, statistics, and then also ability to code in a very low-level language, and also knowing finance. So it's quite a niche area where you need to know all three parts, and then it's quite hard to recruit and find people for that area. So the role involves a lot of mentoring, etc. And education abroad is particularly valuable because there you have the quantitative finance roles.
How happy so far you are with your decision to come back on a scale from 1 to 10?
Well, I've never really regretted it, and as I said, my friends are really enjoying traveling here to visit me as well, and more friends are returning actually, so really nice to see. And we even have quant roles here today, so most of our team is actually people returning from the abroad that have heard about the opportunities here. We're doing a lot that we can in order to market the position. Yeah.
Yannick, why you said that you had a wife who was Lithuanian, that's why you came here. Did you previously have any international experience? How was it to find a job here?
So with the work I was doing in Belgium at the time before I moved, was quite an international company. So I already dealt with companies from India, Benelux, US, and probably most of Western Europe by the time that came. I would say, my then not wife yet, so the opportunity came because of economical downturn and stuff that I wanted to change. And then, the question came, should she move to Belgium? I should move to Lithuania. And then I decided to explore the Lithuanian job market. Luckily for me, my background is IT. So, programming and stuff then tends to be in English, which could theoretically mean I could work everywhere. And then it was actually relatively easy, but also very interesting finding interviews with companies here. Obviously, the question comes, why here? And then big part of that also was, how do I feel about integrating with Lithuanian work culture? Communication tends to be in Lithuanian. Also, like you mentioned, water cooler stuff wasn't really a thing then. I was very used to that. We have a water cooler chat about anything. When I started here, it didn't really happen at all. Quite the opposite, actually. Everyone was at their desk. Please just leave me alone. I'll just do my 8 hours. So when I then showed up with a question, usually I got a look where it's like, please don't ask me too much because I don't really know how to deal with you right now, kind of thing. But overall, I would say those meetings, interviews are the usual nerve-wracking thing sometimes, but I would say overall the response was quite positive after those interviews.
Agnes, what is your story of relocation?
Yeah, I see my story is a little bit different than the rest ones. I was exported to North America, not imported back to Lithuania. Probably most of Lithuanian companies sees North America as the biggest market where they could make the most money. I was crazy about North America. I was crazy about USA because of basketball. And at that time, Teltonika wanted to open North American market. And they thought, okay, how we could find someone who will be dedicated, who will leave, friends, family, and will be ready to go to North America and look for new opportunities. So I had a separate conversation with the owner of the company. He explained, okay, this is the plane ticket, one way, and I'm expecting after the first business trip, you are already bringing the clients. So that journey started roughly 6 years, 7 years ago. It was not easy, traveling, learning about the market. Just because you don't have a know-how about the market, you're talking with the partners, clients, they educating you at first before even you selling something. You don't know the mentality of the market, different probably than Tadas. When you grew up, you have friends, you could speak about football, you could speak about NBA, other
Barbecue.
sports. Barbecue. Every state has specific topics to discuss, and if you're coming from Lithuania, firstly, you need to educate them about Lithuania. Some of them, they don't know where Lithuania is. So this is my story, and successfully, I'm still in North America, in Canada.
How often do you come back?
This is a good question. So I miss Lithuania a lot. That's the reason why I came back.
So this is your first time in 6 years?
No. I love Lithuania. I'm coming back to Lithuania twice a year for summer holidays and Christmas holidays to spend the time with the family, spend the time with the friends. And once I'm going back to Canada, back straight to the business full time.
So I understand then that Teltonika grows talent from within the company and then kind of gives them space to gain international experience in the as the company expands globally. What would you say are the pros and cons of that strategy?
It's a good question. Depends on the market, depends on the country. Sometimes the plan could work. For example, my plan worked. But we had amazing cases. For example, Živile, would you be ready to go to Kenya to live and open the market?
I actually have a friend who works for the United Nations and lives in Nairobi, and she's got small kids, and she says that for small kids, this is the best country with the best climate and with everything available, with cheap nanny services and so on and so forth. So after having visited her in Kenya, yes, I would.
Okay. So I probably chose wrong country. But overall, we have 27 offices, and we have the cases when someone wants to relocate and try to build their career in that specific country. But we have as well countries such as in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Morocco, Peru, or Brazil, not even safe countries. So it's very difficult to leave the family members, very difficult to leave your friends and start to build a business in that new country. But what is the benefit for the business perspective? That person, once relocating, he's already bringing the company's values immediately from scratch. And once he hiring even the first employee, he's already presenting the company as his own company. in those cases, when you need to hire someone locally, where is the benefit of that? That he knows the legal things, he knows maybe people who could work for you, but he doesn't know the company's value. So it's very 50-50 answer. Every company needs to risk if they want to be successful, and it's two type scenarios. At the same time, once I relocated and once I started to lead the company, I don't know any Canadian legal at that time. So you need to find someone who knows the legal. You don't know any about the business types, about certificates, like different stuff to start even business. So you learning even from the clients, from expensive mistakes. But at the same time, you at least bringing the company's value.
Do you remember one expensive mistake, as you put it, that you would want to share with us?
I don't know if our legal team would let me to share right now. But most of the time that Lithuanian companies making a lot of decisions pretty quickly. And in those big corporations in North America, specifically probably the ones who used to work with America or knows, most of them immediately suing, and most, I think, of the lawyers globally based in USA and Canada. So mostly everyone is suing you for any case.
Lithuania is taking decisions quickly, you say. I think, Yannick, this is something that you have mentioned when we had a little conversation before that panel, that you know, there are lots of bureaucratic processes in Lithuania, and some things do take time, but in terms of connectivity, reaching out to people here, it's much easier. So maybe that's the international experience you would take from Lithuania to bring back to Belgium, if you ever needed to come back.
In part, yes. I think the benefit Lithuania and in conclusion also Lithuanian talents have, there is no archaic infrastructure. As an anecdotal example, like when my family and friends, I was like, what do you mean about that? It's like, well, you know, when I go to like a provider or something, like I need fiber internet, I can sort it out in 10 minutes. It takes you 3 weeks to do in Belgium. The same thing applies to similar things. You want to introduce a new tool, you want to try a new tactic, you talk with a few people, 2 weeks later you're working with a new tool. If I would do this like and then in other companies in most Western Europe, then okay, like we need to sign this document. Like you said, maybe a lawyer gets involved, maybe this or that, or like the boss of the boss has to sign off because it's an additional budget. You don't really have that here because that structure doesn't exist. So that stuff is much, much faster. So I think in the previous panels was also mentioned, you know, in like American markets, there's a lot less red tape. I think it's the same in Western Europe. There's more red tape in Lithuania. So if there's anything that they could and probably should learn from Lithuanian companies is remove some of the red tape. It will actually make you more money as a result of it.
Would you agree with that, Rosita? And before you comment on that, I will just want to explain to everybody your achievements. You have established a new global business service center for Dexcom EMEA operating out of Vilnius, a big multifunctional center with over 500 employees from many countries. Another global multifunctional business services center which employs over 4,000 employees. Global anti-money laundering operations across the Nordics, Lithuania and Poland with over 2,000 employees. What is your take on this value of international experience debate?
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Jibila. It's. I think I was blessed, you know, to have such a nice journey throughout my career, over 20 years in the business. And I've been at 3 companies only, but there's always been something burning, like burning platform. And I'm the person who loves sorting things out, to understand them. I'm a really curious person, and getting involved into those challenging situations. And I'm pure Lithuanian, have done all my international activities out of Lithuania. Did live abroad, but these were like short-term assignments. But have spent time on planes quite a lot, and this was also a choice that family was here in Lithuania, and family was a big big driver for me to be part of this international journey. What I've taken through those years and learnings, that with every challenge you become much more strong for your next journey. And I think this may be something which is common for us as Lithuanians. We want to be successful. If we take an activity, a challenge, we want to complete it with the best outcome, not afraid to fail, but we are fast to recover. And I think there's also always out-of-box thinking, I would say. Many Lithuanians that I have met abroad and here in Lithuania. So it's very much this urgency to succeed, which sometimes can be painful. But you learn from that. And with this international background, yes, I had many learnings, and super happy to proceed to another one where I've taken a new position just 3 months ago. And my colleagues asked, why did you do this? It's like, isn't it enough, what you have already? But probably not. This is curiosity, maybe the other one area.
Urgency to succeed, but then on the other hand, no fear of failure is what you said. Do you spot any differences in those Lithuanians who you employ, who have got international experience, having worked abroad, and those who have studied and mainly worked in Lithuania, and what are those?
I think it's quite similar. The biggest difference is that Lithuanians who have studied and worked abroad, they bring different capabilities, different positions or roles that we not necessarily have in the market yet.
For example, quant, right?
Quant or UX design, for example, which is developing here, but at our company right now, there's quite a number of people who have got the studies abroad and also worked for companies there and brought this experience here to our company.
But if we talk about different work ethics or means of communication, are there any differences?
The main difference would be, I would say, this freedom of thought. I would say Lithuanians who come from back to Lithuania, so they are much more easy to question. They are not afraid, to ask questions. They also are not afraid to stand up, and provide information or get on an assignment. So I would say there's much more freedom, and maybe it's because of my generation where I may bring this a bit of fixed mindset from the older times, but I've been working all the time with young population, and I can spot these things.
More freedom, not free to ask questions. Would you relate to that, Tadas?
For sure. I think we mentioned in one of the panels that Lithuanians tend to be a little bit more humble, meek, maybe on a quieter side. So, but I think the trend is also changing, especially in the startup world, where you have to be aggressive in its own nature. I've noticed that, even in Lithuanian startups, if you want to do business with a New Yorker who's ready to run you over and take your last shirt, you have to stand up for yourself and for sure mean business.
So what do you do now? Would you tell us a bit more about the startup that you yourself have contributed to creating?
Yeah, so I'm currently working for a Science for Brain with Dr. Arminas Ragauskas, who's here. Go Kaunas. We're creating an amazing solution to save patients' brains when they go through a difficult heart surgery. And one of the things that I can relate to in terms of bringing experience and knowledge from acquiring from really working in a broad entire career is understanding the different markets that we're actually going into. So US market, the decision-making process, who are the stakeholders, legalities, financial burdens, and so on, fundraising, etc. And those are the things that comes to from the experience. It's the market that we're going for, is the healthcare, which is my domain of expertise, as well as the startup world, where again, that hustle culture, the not working your typical 9 to 5 hours, outside the realm of your typical day-to-day. I think Lithuania is growing in many different ways, and I'm so happy to contribute to that and bring in here in the home country.
How has it been for you so far, settling in back in Lithuania? When we spoke on the phone before this debate, I will never forget how you immediately told me that you were so surprised that Lithuanians take holidays very seriously, and that was something that you did not expect.
I learned it pretty easily, that pretty quickly, I should say, that summers are taken really seriously here. So if you're planning to do major decision-making milestones during July and August, that's bad planning on your side. I've learned that really quickly, that you'll have to wait till September. But also learned small is good as a country. I literally called VMI, and I got a real person on the phone after 2 beeps who answered questions and solved my problems or challenges that I had in 5 minutes, which is, I've called the state of Florida legislative things to solve for taxes. I was on hold for 2 hours, call got dropped. It was another call for 2 hours, call got dropped because I went into after hours. And then the third call was 1 hour hold for the person just to tell me, here's a different number to call to solve this issue. This is way, way smoother over here. Not talking about the healthcare and other things too.
Which you would compliment again. I mean, you would, say nice things about the health system.
Absolutely, compliment from all my heart.
Would you expand on this a little? We need to feel better about ourselves, those who permanently live here, I mean, those who live in other countries as well. Maybe that would be, help them make the decision to come back.
Actually, guys, asveikata is not a really bad thing at all. In fact, I think it works way smoother than healthcare in the United States. So when you know how much it's going to cost you, you get your results within half hour, and you get your care and at a fraction of the cost in the US. I mean, when I ran my startup and had to pay for employees' healthcare, it's staggering. I mean, it's 10x or more what your employer, even for private insurance that they pay here. Huge, huge difference. And I think, assuming that the new tax laws will not going to change too drastically, I still think this is super, super efficient and great benefit to have.
Thank you. Vaiva, what would you...
Maybe quickly add a joke to that. Try to fill in your taxes in Western Europe compared to Lithuania. In Belgium, it took me 3 days. Here, it takes me 5 minutes.
And in Belgium, you would probably do it on paper,
on paper, literally on
right?
paper. You get a giant envelope where it's like, hey, please fill all this stuff in. Here it is, log in, click OK, and I'm done. So.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. It's important to emphasize that all over again. Vaiva, what would you say, what would you define as the biggest value of what we refer to as international experience here?
Yeah, I would say the biggest value of international experience, I mean, for me personally, it was definitely the job opportunities, like the roles that you don't have here, you can get abroad. Then the second thing would be really high quality education. Like usually if you do go to pursue studies abroad, you do go for like the top tier universities, usually. And global network as well. I would say it's extremely valuable. I think initially I thought that maybe it's a drawback actually of not being in Lithuania. Because if you study here, you probably meet people here, etc. But actually, people who do return back home they do end up in like really respectful high-end roles, right? And then knowing these people is actually extremely valuable. Yeah.
Agnes, would you single out something as, I don't know, a drawback of international experience?
Couple of things, and I want to come back to one of the topic of what Rosita said about the freedom as well. Question probably for the rest of the panelists. Most of you, even Yannick, you Belgium. So most of you have been abroad in different countries, and as you said, you learned that freedom. And I feel the same that once I'm in Canada, you know, everybody is socializing, chit-chats, everything. Once I'm landing in Lithuania, to see those sad faces and try to have the chit-chat is so difficult. So my question, once you've been so open in the country before and you're coming back to Lithuania, Lithuania is not changing you and you are not, because once you moved first, it was difficult as well to change it. And right now you're coming back and you need to adapt again. You are not the same anymore. You could not have those chit-chats as you used to because the rest ones think that you are different from the group. So maybe you could tell if you had any experiences like this.
What about your own experience, Agnes? Do you feel like...
I even saying to my family, even said today, once I landed to the airport, immediately I could say how sad it is in Lithuania from the faces, you know? Nobody is smiling, nobody is saying any compliments.
Is that any longer relevant? I mean, this is the story like of 10 years ago, from my perspective.
It's still happening.
Okay, let's see. Tade.
Maybe you could elaborate more, guys, but for me, if you're smiling to someone, you will not get a smile back.
Tade, have you become like more reserved and not as free since you've come back?
Well, I guess I always had that stoic, serious look in the United States, so coming back here, I guess it blended in really quickly, naturally. But to my surprise, jogging and everybody says hi, hello to everyone, I did not expect that.
So you haven't tried jogging, probably.
I need to start the jog.
Does anyone else have any input to make?
I do sometimes joke about the elevator effect. Like if I step in the elevator, Lithuanians will tend to turn away from each other so they don't have to say good morning. That still happens.
What about Belgium elevators? I mean, do they high-five each other?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Well, maybe not quite high-five each other, but...
In Canada, usually giving compliments and having the chit-chat, trying to have a conversation on the way. Of course, in the elevators, you're spending much more time in the big buildings comparing with Lithuania.
Definitely. But it's very similar. I would say it depends if you know the people. Like if I compare 11 years ago till now, 11 years ago it was, I should not say too much. I actually have an anecdote with a now very dear colleague of mine. We started roughly at the same time. I walked to her desk, I said good morning, she froze. Now we talk like nothing's happening, but if I compare it to now, if it's people at my office, we have the water cooler stuff. We created that connection over time. Where it's like, yeah, okay, I can talk with these people, that's fine. As soon as I leave the building, it's different. Like I don't feel like I can say hello to everyone like in the store, for instance, like I could do in Belgium.
But Agnes, did you mean that like as a negative aspect or?
No, it's not negative. It's, you know, you coming back home with a smile, you know, you want to chit-chat or something, or you got used to it. For example, in Canada, you're going to work, and on the way to work, next to the traffic light, even the guy could stop and say, I like your style today. Imagine what kind of energy boost as well, you're getting confidence boost. In Lithuania, nobody even giving any compliment, specifically guy to the guy, you know? In Lithuania, this is big taboo even to give the compliment to the guy.
I wouldn't say nobody, but I would just say that if you go to the US and you go to a supermarket where you just want to buy goods and someone starts to comment your purchases and the cashier to, you know, have a small talk, that's annoying.
Again, maybe I got used to it. They even have the full-time job, someone standing in front and just saying, hey, how are you?
Yeah, okay.
So these are the differences, you know, what I see lately.
I mean, North America is a bit extreme when it comes to that.
It's
you have
very
to
extreme.
admit as well. Like, I think Western Europe is sort of in the middle, but yeah.
Tadas, one last comment, and I will open this up to the audience. Maybe you do have your inputs about international experience. Maybe you've got a question or two as we are about to wrap up this discussion. This is becoming interesting, but now we're talking about cultural stereotypes more than career advices.